Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Equine Episode Examination, where today we will be talking about the mid-season finale that premiered this past Saturday on Discovery Family, Not Asking for Trouble. If this is the first time joining us here on Equine Episode Examination, we do record this live on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at CinemaQuestria.com, so if you want to join in the live chat, if you're watching it now or watching it recorded, make sure to head over to our site there. At that time, go to the stream tab, and you'll be able to join in the discussion on the episode there. So, pretty much what we do is just pretty much basically gonna discuss the episode and give their opinions on it, different things on it. We'll start more general and work more into specifics about the episode as we go on the discussion. And in addition to everyone in the chat participating in discussion, there's a few of us here in the voice call that'll be discussing the episode as well. I'm Rain Shadow, and
say I'm Mr. Ben.
This is Jay Smith.
I'm Matt. Me not stubborn, Matt.
English Matt better check self before wreck self.
That's a...
You better watch yourself, or you'll get completely shreked.
No, let's not bring that into here.
Come on, Shrek memes is all I know.
The sad life of Matt the Shadow Man. They took away my Shrek memes. I have nothing left.
I'll just have to use Sonic memes instead.
So yeah.
The poor man's version.
So yeah, not asking for trouble. What was everyone's initial thoughts on the episode?
Well, for once I wasn't a heretic this time. I didn't actually watch the episode ahead of time, so I actually first seen this with last Saturday along with all of you. So I have to admit it wasn't quite what I was expecting, but that's not a bad thing. I really like how for a Pinky episode, Pinky was remarkably a lot more mature than she was in the past Pinky-centric episodes. So
that's not exactly hard when you're comparing it to the Yaks, though.
They're just strong-headed.
I'm going to be straight here. When I heard that this was going to have the Yaks in the episode, I wasn't like groaning, but honest and truthfully, their first appearance was not. I mean, it was okay, but I just find them very one-dimensional, and I think we see a little bit more about them here, but they're not exactly massively developed a lot. But I think they're basically used as a crutch to help develop Pinky as much as themselves, which is fine. You know, I'm not gonna rail against that too much. As for the episode itself, it was, to be fair, it's basically living in the shadow of last week's episode. A royal problem is it was always going to be a tall order to sort of follow that episode up, and you know, don't get me wrong, the episode is not like amazing. It's going to be one of those episodes where when I look back at the season, I'll just think to it and think, yeah, fine episode, but you know, not one that was, you know, that sticks out massively.
Yeah, I think even pulling it away from last week, because I mean that's the great thing about having these episodes once a week is get a little more gap between them, so you can kind of let them stand on their own more rather than watching them back to back. So I think even pulling it away from last week, this episode's the premise of it and everything that kind of happens in it is fairly simple. So I'm not even sure exactly how much I'll have to talk about this episode today, because it's really pretty straightforward in terms of the content of the episode. But it's one of those things that's kind of it may not be terribly memorable, but at the most point it's at least like an entertaining episode. I think it was enjoyable to kind of watch the antics. There's a lot of, you know, various kind of humor in it as well, so even though it might not have a ton of substance to it in terms of story or character development, it's still, you know, it's still fairly at least enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the Cutie Pox. That is like what I would call the common garden sort of run-of-the-mill episode with some fun bits thrown in. That's basically what this episode was too, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not gonna rail against the episode that it's not, it's not a royal problem. But then again, how many episodes a season do we have that's like a royal problem? We get a handful of episodes that are that sort of earth-breaking, each season. It's not going to be like that every week. I mean, to be fair, we've had quite a lot of a lot of sort of characters we've not seen and stuff like that already this season. So it's not like it's new. And don't get me wrong, I'm not upset that the Yaks were returned. I think there are other characters that I would perhaps want to see before them. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. But Prince Rutherford was fine, and the Yaks were fine. But yeah, I mean, I think Pinky makes the episode for me, and that's like you say, it does show a much more mature side to Pinky here. Although, like I say, comparing Pinky to the Yaks when the Yaks are like they are, it's not exactly massively hard for Pinky to look more mature by comparison. That's sort of all I'm saying, really.
So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the story and the writing of the episode. So this episode was written by... I was going to get... Anyone had the episode writer name? I was going to get the episode writer name.
Mei-chan.
Thank you. And I completely blew off my mind before here.
So yeah, this was
another...
What, for Avatar?
Yeah, this was another...
Yes,
this was another writer that... Yeah, this is another writer that wrote for Avatar: The Last Airbender as well as Voltron. So this would be our second one of the season.
So MLP is now the retirement home for ex-Avatar and Korra writers.
Well, they're still writing for Voltron, so it's not like that.
Can't wait for that third season, though. Hot diggity damn.
So, yeah, in terms of the writing and stuff, it was nice to, again, this season having another episode that was more kind of continuity here, bringing back an old set of characters from a couple seasons ago and maybe exploring them a little farther, with us being able to, have the Yaks in the show again, but even more importantly, actually not having them come to Ponyville, but actually getting to go to Yak-Yakistan and actually see around Yak-Yakistan and some of the other Yaks there, and sort of what their whole situation and culture is over there in their homeland of Yak-Yakistan there, because we briefly saw it in their previous appearance back in season 5, but it was just the outside for like 5 seconds before Pinky got pulled away. So it was nice actually being able to revisit them and actually being able to visit that location for reals this time.
Yak-Yakistan, not to be confused with, I don't know, Llama Stan.
No, I thought
Yak?
wasn't it Goatistan? Saved by the magical cows.
Oh yeah.
I want to see that spinoff.
What, My Little Kids?
My little calves.
I say, baby goats are kids, aren't they? So it would be
No,
My Little Kids.
No, because the ponies are the cows and Pinky's thing. The goats were the Yaks.
My Little Bovines.
Yes, there we go.
My Little Beef.
I could go for a burger right now.
McDonald's tie-in. Eat Twilight Moosicle.
That would be funny if it was like, if they were actually like a legitimate sponsor, kind of like what they do with Super Sentai and all that.
But yeah, it was great actually getting to see a new location that we haven't really explored again this season. Cause I really hope we do that maybe a little bit more this season as well. We saw a few other new locations last season, not as many as I was hoping we would see, but hopefully we'll get to see a few more this season as well.
Well, considering one of the themes for the toy lines was Explore Equestria, at least. Well, I think that's when they can at least have something that's as an ongoing toy line, because it's something that, as they bring in more locations, they can use that for the toy line. So that's actually quite a smart move, really.
Well, I mean, this season really doesn't have a toy kind of toy line theme since the movie toys are coming
the
out
toy
this
line
season.
theme for this year is the movie.
Well, that's what I mean. So I mean, the show doesn't have a toy line theme this year because all the toys are being made for the movie.
And in a sense, that may well benefit the show massively in the sense that they're not tied to a particular toy line or toy line.
Well, to be fair, I don't think that ever harmed the show. I mean, because we are talking about how last season really didn't follow that much in terms of Explore Equestria, so I don't really think that's an issue.
Right.
I actually would have liked if they would have followed it more last season. To be truthful,
which is kind of amazing when you think that sort of back in sort of season 1 and 2, you'd be saying, it'd be terrible if they just do exactly what the toy division want them to do. And now we're saying, actually, no, the toy division actually has good ideas. Use them.
It's not like Rainbow Power from season 4.
I liked Rainbow Power. I liked how gaudy and cheesy it looked.
But Explore Equestria is definitely better than that.
Well, it's a better concept, at least. I mean, basically super form ponies. Well, we had the elements of harmony, so it was just another version of that, really, sort of, kind of.
Yeah, Technotron. It's like Oktoberfest, except instead of getting smashed, you're doing the smashing.
So it's like a Hulk fest. No, they should have had Prince Puffle go puny pony and then just smash her Pinky around like a ragdoll.
How do you feel, Tim? How do you feel this is a superior episode to the Griffinstone one in terms of world building? Why do you feel like that? I'm kind of curious. Because I mean, I'd say they're both kind of similar in terms of that. Yeah, I saw it. I didn't really see how that applied to it. Oh, okay, I see. I thought you. I misread your other point then.
I'll just mention what Mr. Benson's written in the chat there, saying countries in Europe. I don't think it necessarily has to be Europe. To be fair, there's plenty of hard-headed Americans saying that we don't need the help from other countries. We're America. We're the greatest. I don't think it's necessarily exclusive to any one particular country or area.
I'm not disputing that. Because, we're Americans. We are kind of pig-headed when it comes to certain issues.
It is whenever you mention about, we have freedom, it's like, well, you're a democracy. You have about as much freedom as any other democracy. So,
technically, we're a republic, not really a democracy, but that's another issue for another time.
Well, you use a democratic process for your political measures, so semantics.
Yeah, I mean, there is a pretty big difference between those two, though. It's a little bit different than that. The funny thing is the Yakistan's location in terms of geography is a little bit closer to like Saskatchewan in Canada. If you look on the map, with sort of Crystal Empire being more like Ontario, maybe in that area, maybe Quebec if it's not exactly matched up, but. It's more in that kind of Alberta, Saskatchewan area in terms of.
So you're basically saying that the Crystal Empire is like Canada, whereas like it's sort of northern Canada, whereas like that sort of northern America, southern Canada sort of thing.
So what you're saying is that the animation studio that's based in Canada is basically basing its own fictional areas off of Canada.
Well, I mean, they're all.
I'm funning. Don't look too further into this.
I'm just saying. I mean, like most of the locations in Equestria are kind of based off North American cities, both in terms of Canada and the U.S. obviously, because there's also They do have Vancouver as well, which is of course Vancouver, Canada. A little bit closer to where the studios are located.
I thought it was a place where they sold. I thought it was a place where they sold Vans and Hoovers.
Interesting point is the the first episode, the first Yak episode was the first episode that was written by Nick Confalone back in season 5 as well.
So what you're saying is that May Chan will end up writing some of the funniest episodes in the show?
I don't know. It's hard to believe that it was just that long ago in terms of that episode showed as well.
Sounds like 5 minutes ago.
We actually get to see the balloon again, and we haven't seen. I don't know when the last time we actually saw the freaking balloon, with the exception of the opening title sequence, of course, for it. We actually see Pinky traveling by it.
We got a nice view of the castle as well from that as well.
I'm just gonna chalk this up to being its magic, but I still can't get over the fact that the freaking balloon seems to travel pretty much precisely to where it needs to go.
It's Pinkie Pie controlling it though, Mr. Ben. So it's Pinkie Pie. Don't question it.
I'm not questioning it. I just find it funny because even when Pinky wasn't the one actually operating it, even when like any of the other main cast happened to utilize it, it just happens to go precisely where it needs to go, as opposed to being like behooving to the whims of the wind.
It's Twilight's balloon, yes. Don't know if it's been I don't know if it's been stated implicitly, but I think it is actually hers, isn't it?
I don't think it specifically is stated one way or the other who the balloon truly belongs to.
It's a communal balloon for the community.
Yeah.
So if Derpy wants to use it to go on a round trip round the whole world, she can use it.
Yeah, she just has to rank it. Well, didn't we see we saw someone actually manning the balloon, as in caring for it in one of the earlier episodes in season 2 or something. So might be something you can rent. It's you can take a train ride, or you can rent the balloon.
I do recall that we did see someone else, a mare with I think a cherry cutie mark, kind of pulling it off when after Applejack managed to rescue it from the Timberwolves or something like that. But I don't know. That's besides the point of what we're discussing here. So.
Can I just say I also really loved the way how Pinky was not subtle at all with her story. She was trying to tell the Yaks. Although to be fair, with the Yaks being as stubborn as they are, I suppose you kind of have to be pretty much a blunt object with them, because it's sort of suggested that the Yaks they're not completely unintelligent, but they're not the sharpest tools in the shed, and they're also exceptionally stubborn. I mean, they make Applejack look like a pussycat, by comparison. And AJ can be pretty hard-headed when she wants to be. So, or any of the Apple family for that matter. But
the story was so paper thin that if Pinky wanted to,
you don't. Sorry, go ahead.
The story was so paper thin that if Pinky might as well have been using glass to get her point across. For how clear it was.
I do like how Prince Rutherford actually does find a way to like give that option D in the story too as well. So even if he wasn't able to, even if he wasn't, it doesn't see that the story was about them. Still understood kind of what it was and stayed headstrong in that.
I'm wondering whether they were just literally trolling Pinky by the end then.
I just really did like how Pinky was written in this episode. I think that I think that she still had her kind of funny, wacky sort of personality that she has, but at the same time, it was really the first episode we've had this season of her where she was the main character, but also first one we've had in a while where she was kind of in control of the situation, I guess you could say. It wasn't sort of like her appearance in the Maud Pie and Starlight episode earlier, where the whole thing revolving around her was, how worried she was, and she was, making all these mistakes and stuff because of how worried she was in that episode. But here, I mean, she's in control. She sees problems, problem solves, and stuff like that. So I mean, I think she was, this is really kind of written with her at her best here in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, she even managed to keep her temper by realizing that allowing her frustration with the situation to consumers is not going to help anyone. And then even coming up with a roundabout way to help them while still allowing the yaks to save face.
Just a minor little question about just sort of the semantics of the episode. Obviously, she was invited to basically come because Pinky wouldn't, shut the fuck up. He was like, oh, please take me to this event, please take me to this event, please take me to this event, and 50 times. Like, yeah, okay, we'll take you to this event. Do you think this would have worked as a map episode? Just so you know,
No.
Obviously the reason. No, you don't think so? I mean, I feel it would have to have a few tweaks for it to actually be a map.
The episode really had nothing to do about friendship or a friendship problem. So you would have had to really upend the entire story and completely change what it was about in order to make it an episode. And then it's kind of like you're having the map call one pony like it did with Starlight, and at that point, I really hope when they use the map in the future, they continue having a pairing of two ponies. Because I think that's what it worked best as, was where you pair two ponies together that might not get episode time alone together that often, and kind of see how they play off of each other and tackle a situation. Having the map just call one pony to tackle a situation, you don't get that same dynamic, I don't think.
We did kind of get that with a royal problem, because obviously we had the interaction.
But that only made sense
Twilight
because of
and
the situation
Starlight.
at hand. For it, with Starlight being
to be fair,
outside.
I don't mind. I mean, hell, I wouldn't mind the map calling 3 ponies if it requires 3.
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, I would rather those episodes personally, I'd rather personally have those episodes focus on just 2 characters rather than throwing too many characters into the pot. That's one of the things I liked about the map episodes the best, was that tight focus on character development and character story on just 2 characters without having. And those map episodes are specifically designed where no other of the main 6 or, no other ponies are really involved there. They can really just focus just on those 2 characters, which is always nice.
Hey, as long as the map doesn't call Twist, it's fine by me. You imagine the map calls Twist and Twilight just gives Starlight this look as if to say, what the fuck did you do to this map when we tried to fix it?
Yeah, a map episode. Not with Twilight, not with Starlight and Trixie, but a map episode with Starlight and Twilight. That would be an interesting map episode as well. Calling the protege and the mentor. But yeah, overall, in terms of story, I mean, I don't really know how much there else is there to discuss with it. It's a pretty basic one. I mean, what's everyone's? I'm curious because I haven't really had time to think this through. Past few days, I was curious what everyone thought about sort of the episode's solution and conclusion for it. Did anyone have any issues with that, or what was everyone's opinion on sort of how Pinky solved the problem?
I think with the Yaks thinking sort of not in a sort of a simplistic but also unconventional way, I think it kind of called for a slightly unconventional solution. So I'm not exactly upset about it. Do I think it could have been handled better? Maybe, but it worked out in the end. So, to be fair, the episode is sort of one of those ones where the issue was not exactly like a major one. It's not like, say, it wasn't like a friendship problem. It was more a sort of, an issue. Like I say, it was an issue of stubbornness. So, if it was a friendship problem, it was dealt in that kind of way, I'd have more of an issue with it. But to me, to be brutally honest, I just didn't. It didn't bother me one way or the other, really.
Yeah, I can kind of see like where some criticisms of the ending kind of come in with the lesson kind of being muddled. Like if someone doesn't want any help, well, just go ahead and help them anyway, whether or not they're asking for it, because that obviously isn't necessarily the best thing in all situations for it. But I think Tim and chat makes a good point about this episode. Is more specifically Pinky has gotten to know them, and this is something Prince Rutherford says explicitly at the end of the episode, that Pinkie Pie knows them well enough that she knows basically what Tim is saying here, that they don't like asking for help because they're very prideful and very stubborn. They don't want asking for help. Just like how men don't like asking for directions, the Yaks don't like asking for help with anything. But at the same time, being helped, especially with the situation they're in, I don't... obviously they didn't really mind that. So I think it's a matter of Pinkie Pie knew them a lot, or knew them enough from her past interactions that they needed this help, and they're never going to ask for it, but they're not going to survive if they don't get it, and they should be at least appreciative of that. So they could have maybe handled it a little bit better in terms of how they kind of wrote it in, because I can kind of I can see where some of the criticisms are coming from in terms of that lesson there at the end, and helping people that don't want help. And even if they say no, just do it anyway. I can see how that can be misconstrued.
Well, technically, I don't know whether this is the same in America, but say I'm working where I work in my shop, and a customer collapses, and obviously we obviously do first aid or whatever we need to do, and we call for an ambulance, and they turn around and say, no, I don't want an ambulance to come. And this has actually happened in the store. We can't force them into that ambulance, but by law we can't force them to go. If they're able to basically get up and leave off their own steam in a healthy manner, then obviously we can't force them to go, and neither can anyone. And if the ambulance did come, they can't force them into that ambulance to the hospital. So there is some kind of a feel that there are occasions when if someone's being so stubborn that they don't want the help, that you really can't help them, and you wouldn't be allowed to. I think obviously the show is not necessarily pushing for something like that, but I can see, like I say, I can see why people would find that an issue. Yeah. So basically, what this is saying is that Rain keeps telling me to not post Shrek memes, so that means that I can post Shrek memes all the more.
Yes, that's the moral. But no, I think it's a good point in terms of cultural differences as well, where a lot of people who might be in a country like here in the States or something might see it that way and have a problem with that. But with like what Mr. Ben and Tim are saying in chat here, in terms of some cultures, being shameful to ask for help, but also have traditions of just helping people without asking beforehand anyway. And obviously the Yaks are shown in the show to be a much, much different culture from the ponies, who are much more kind of much more kind of American or Canadian, whatever, European in terms of the way they do things in their society, where the Yaks are much different, and again shown to be that kind of different culture. So it does work that way. It's an interesting moral, since a lot of the audience might not understand it, just being that a lot of the audience is in countries where that might not be the norm. And I think that's one of the reasons you see a lot of I don't want to say backlash, but a lot of people not really liking how the ending was done, because you really do have to maybe see that difference in culture, and how in this episode specifically Pinky was able to understand that difference, that they were never going to accept help, but they did need it. And yeah. And it's funny because Pinkie Pie begs Twilight at the beginning to give her this like official title of ambassador to the Yaks, and I think, like Tim's saying in chat here, I do think by the end she really did kind of earn that by what she did, basically for all the reasons that Tim said there.
Pinkie Pie just wants a title. She's fed up of not being. She can't be a princess, so she'll be an ambassador instead. Fluttershy has no need for such titles. She's Fluttershy, damn it. Pretty much like AJ as well. She don't need titles. She's a farmer. That's all she needs. I do wonder with all these, just a slight little tangent, but with Pinky, basically being some sort of ambassador for the Yaks, and we have like Twilight and sort of helping out with, there's obviously like Rainbow and that with like Griffinstone. And then we have obviously Spike with the dragons and stuff like that. It does make me wonder whether having all these different like races and that, eventually they're going to get utilized in one big orgy of a war against someone like
God, okay. God. I'm glad your sentence continued after the word orgy. I need sleep.
Hey,
God.
Hey, if that's how your fan fiction wants to go, I'm not going to judge.
Implying that there's anything wrong with that.
Implying that there hasn't already been fan fiction like that.
Insert the Lenny face here.
But yeah, it is the cool kind of the cool thing about the show, is that even just within the ponies themselves, there's obviously a lot of differences between individuals and between the different Pegasi or ponies and unicorns as well. And then, branching out now that we've gotten through so many seasons now, the show continues to branch out and show other races of, like, creatures other than just ponies, which is something we mainly just got, with the exception of, like evil antagonists and monsters and stuff in the early seasons. We didn't see a lot of non-ponies in the earlier seasons of the show, but since then we branched out and seen different forms of horses and different more dragons and the Yaks and stuff like that. So it is something that's neat to see in the show.
Well,
what was that?
And sort of good changelings as well. I mean, obviously
Yes,
you've got Thorax and his sort of reformed changelings as well. So
yeah, and even like stuff like Gilda, like we saw Gilda and obviously. The first season, but even then, there she was an antagonist. So it's
But the best comparison with Gilda is Gabby, which is like almost like on the complete upper scale.
And of course that's season 6, going on. So. And here's the funny thing about talking about the avalanches there. They say they get that every year, and this stop event is also an event that happens every year. So obviously they're getting those avalanche every year directly because of this event. So moving on. Also just to character discussion as well. We can just kind of combine this into that. Oh, because we've already started talking about this a little bit. So what did everyone think about the characterization in the episode?
Like I mentioned in the chat room, I am just blown away by how Pinky was just portrayed in this one here. Not only because she was so mature, you compared to previous episodes in the series, but as I was mentioning, you wouldn't think that a character of Pinky's caliber would be suited to a diplomatic mission such as what was going on with the Yakistan. But she not only manages to pull it off, but she pulls it off with such aplomb that it's she really managed to bring her A game to this, and she just really blew me away with the expectations on this.
And I think that one of the coolest things about that point too is it really does fit in with her character as well, because we know from past episodes, that she really knows she really gets to know all the other ponies and pony villains, like everyone else she meets. She wants to become friends with them, wants to know everything about them, and we see her have that basement full of the filing cabinets on information on every pony in Ponyville.
What you're basically saying is Pinky is an excellent stalker.
But seriously, but it shows that she really gets to know other people that she meets. She doesn't just want to become friends just to be friends. She wants to get to know other ponies, other creatures, whatever that she meets, and that's why she knows all this information about everyone. And so it makes sense that, on the surface, it's kind of like being this ambassador and stuff and doing all these diplomatic things might seem like the least likely character, but when she's actually going and being able to read, and understand how the Yaks are and their culture is, and being able to work around that, it does make sense still in the forms of her character that she would get to know, want to be friends and get to know them in that kind of level.
To be fair, Pinky wouldn't be like a traditional stalker. For example, she would give a lot more hugs.
I do think there's a difference between stalking and I mean, this is just getting to know everyone she meets.
I'm messing. I'm just messing. I'm just saying that the amount that she knows about other ponies, it is borderline stalkerish. I mean, it does help that Pinky basically has a pocket dimension that she's able to basically use at will. So it's kind of you're not going to be able to hide from the pink pony for too long. She just won't go away. What I like though is just moving to the Yaks. I just like how they sort of they see sort of Pinky's antics and they just seem to be nonplussed by it at all. Whereas other ponies, say Twilight, would be I don't understand this. Help, but basically, whereas Twilight spends a whole episode trying to understand Pinky's twitches and stuff, the Yaks are just never, that maybe it's because they're so hard-headed. I don't know, but it's just funny, amusing that they just don't seem all that fussed about Pinky's antics. I think she is a bit more toned down, sort of, especially in this episode, when she's around them. And I think that may well be a case that she knows that that's sort of how she has to act, sort of when she's with the Yaks. But she's still definitely Pinky, so she's not acting like a different pony. She's still she's still her bubbly self. She's still always very happy and cheerful like she is, but she's perhaps not quite so in your face when she's with the Yaks so much. She I think what's interesting is that she does sit and listen a lot more with the Yaks, whereas say sometimes she'll dive a little bit more head first in when she's dealing with say a pony problem, maybe because she's obviously more comfortable. I don't know if to say she's more comfortable around ponies, but I think it's just obviously the different cultures and that I feel that, and I think obviously Pinky wanting to be a good ambassador. Well, one good point of being a good ambassador is the ability to listen. So,
but I think another interesting point is pretty much that whole that whole sequence that I was talking about earlier in terms of her having those file cabinets, that episode was of course from the same episode, the previous Yak episode that actually was shown in. When she was trying to understand the Yaks, and of course that whole episode was about her trying to understand the Yaks culture and get to know them and put on, kind of the correct party for them. And I think this episode, in terms of that, builds directly upon it, where Pinky knows all of this already from her last experience with the Yaks, and she's able to kind of quickly put together what's happening and eventually come up with that solution in the end because of that. So it was a nice little continuation of that story as well.
Just speaking also about characters, can I just mention that we probably got the most amount of reaction from Gummy that we've ever had in the entire show, with the exception of the 100th episode.
Yeah, Gummy was great in this episode. I was happy he had such a big presence in it. I would say even more than episode 100, because I mean, like he wasn't completely still.
It was a monologue in that episode, whereas here he actually had outward, actual reactions to stuff.
Yeah, that lick of Pinkie Pie's face there was
it was adorable.
Yeah.
I now want a Gummy Tank episode.
Say, I would again like the balloon with the whole magic thing. I would normally be kind of concerned that Pinky doesn't seem concerned about the possible effects of bringing her cold-blooded alligator to a snowbound land like Yakistan, especially, which is kind of glaring considering that a previous episode showed how cold weather put Tank, which was a reptile just like Gummy, into a lethargic stupor and ultimately hibernation. But again, this is kind of like one of those issues where it's kind of like Master, like Pet, where Gummy doesn't seem to be any more normal than Pinky is compared to everyone else. I mean, for starters, alligators normally don't have long forked tongues or bright green scales, so.
Or no teeth as well. Don't forget, Gummy hasn't actually got any teeth. That's why he's called Gummy.
Yeah. But yeah, I have to agree. Just the fact that he actually, felt, demonstrated some affection towards Pinky is just that was really heartwarming. I loved seeing that.
Yeah, I think the Yaks. It's funny because the Yaks here, as well as are still shown to be obviously very strong-headed and prideful in their ways, but they come off a lot less, like, as dickish in this episode than they did their previous appearance. I think that they, in addition to Pinkie Pie understanding the Yaks more, I think that the Yaks also understand Pinky and the pony kind of race more as well because of that episode. And I think they do have, obviously, being that they invited her to that event anyway, they definitely have a lot more respect for her because of what happened in that episode. So I think that has a lot to do with how they treat her in this in this episode as well. And I mean, I really like the ending of it too, where Prince Rutherford discovers that Pinkie Pie helped them even though they didn't want the help and they didn't ask for it, and then tells her that she appreciates that he appreciates what she did there.
Titled characters, we could have
What? Hello?
Hello?
Yo, I'm here.
and then at the head of that will be Derpy on her throne with her toy cane.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in
Yeah.
terms of the other yaks in the episodes. Someone was mentioning in the chat there, where they seem to be not exactly on the same page as their prince. I think Prince Rutherford is definitely the most thick-headed, kind of strong-headed one of all of them in terms of keeping them in tradition. Because obviously we see the scene with a lot of them enjoying Pinkie Pie's story that she told, where Rutherford didn't, and quickly put his hoof down and changed their mind. The young yaks, of course, were complaining about being hungry and not wanting to have Prince Rutherford know about it. So there definitely seem to be problems that, especially that Pinkie Pie was seeing, and I think that's one of the things that kind of helps what Pinkie Pie did in the end in terms of doing it, even though she wasn't asked for help, is because it was pretty obvious that a lot of the other yaks were sort of not having a good time with what Prince Rutherford was doing in terms of being so thick-headed and not asking for help there.
They were giving the signals of please help us, but we daren't not say that because of Prince Rutherford. That was the sort of feeling I was sort of getting.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I mean, consider this. I mean, you hear two young yaks, not much older than the Cutie Mark Crusaders, if that, talking about how unhappy they are and how they can't say anything because it will upset the adults. Now, contrast this to the actual, pony foals. While not as always as open as they should be, at least have the minimal fear of at least saying, "Hey, this is upsetting me. Can we please stop?"
Well, hell, we've seen that with obviously the CMC, with obviously when they were doing the race, I can't remember
AFC,
Derby
was the-
races.
Oh, okay.
That one, and then obviously this season we've obviously had Sweetie Belle obviously standing up to Rarity, saying, "Look, I'm no longer a filly anymore. I'm a young mare, and I'm going to have young mares' interests now, and not necessarily a filly's."
And yeah, no, I'm just saying, previously in the series, the younger audience, or not the younger, the younger generation of the ponies have basically stated, hey, we're if there's something that's upsetting them, they're not afraid to at least speak up about it. That, hey, this isn't cool, knock it off. But here, the actual yaks are they're talking to each other about, hey, this is not something that we want, but we're too afraid to speak up, and that's kind of what I think is a little upsetting. But that's also, it's small wonder how where Pinkie was devastated to overhear this and was determined to find a way to fix this.
Yeah, I liked Pinkie Pie kind of exposing the flaws in his story. I really liked that.
Yeah, and she almost immediately just like punches holes through his story, and she just sees through it.
Pinkie's best critic. Hey, because she actually explains why there's holes in the story. Not, "Oh, I hate it." Well, why do you hate it? Well, I just do. I hate it.
0 out of 10 story, Prince Rutherford. Would not read it.
Hey, no, this episode gets a 10 out of 10 because it doesn't have Starlight in it. And yes, I am going to make that joke throughout the entirety of season 7.
Yeah, I guess she was too busy spending time with Trixie to come on
If
this,
you know what I mean.
or maybe Maud, or maybe all of
Oh
them.
boy.
Who knows?
Well, I mean, if Matt's gonna force a joke about Starlight, I mean, I might as well just try to work the episode of the title in as a pun here. I mean, I'm not asking for trouble on this or anything, but
Uh,
yeah, admittedly, I was forcing that one, so
well, the interesting thing is Prince Rutherford, even with Pinkie Pie kind of like exposing his story there, he didn't really ask her to leave or anything either. She just kind of left to go, to go kind of change, to change her plan.
He stripped her of her honorary yak, but he didn't necessarily tell her to like sod off, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, all things considering, that it could have gone a lot worse than what they did. I mean, Prince Rutherford could have just said, "Yak declare war," or something like that all over again, and then they would have been right back to square one. So,
I think Prince Rutherford deep down knew that Pinky was right, but he just didn't have the
he just didn't have the stones large enough to admit it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess that takes me back to the end of the previous Yak episode where Twilight's talking to Celestia, blah 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 blah, if they prevented a war or stuff like that. Celestia's like, oh, what? I like that part of the ending.
But when you think about sort of the achievements of the main six sort of individually, it's sort of no wonder that they're sort of seemed in high regard. I mean, obviously Twilight sort of speaks for herself, but then you've got Pinky basically essentially stopping a war. You've got Rainbow Dash obviously doing sort of her things, and you've got Fluttershy who's able to basically stop the spirit of chaos himself from basically causing havoc and things, and and so on and so forth. It's sort of it's not really a surprise. I mean, how Spike basically has two of sort of the most powerful kind of like races outside of under sort of his whim now. So basically, if you upset Spike, then you're going to get into a huge world of pain. Just from the other dragons, let alone the the changelings, the reformed ones. So you could be attacked by dragons and by changelings that look like dragons.
So, anything else for character or story discussion that anyone has? Okay, then we can move on to the voice acting in the episode. What did everyone think about the episode's voice acting?
Gary Chalk really just brought it to the forefront as Prince Rutherford. I just kind of like how he did everything.
Mm-hmm.
Should have used his He-Man voice. 0 out of 10.
I can't remember if Matt's mentioned this already, but Starlight was secretly in the episode since Kelly Sheridan did voice one of those yak kids.
Yeah, I did mention that after the episode. Like,
0 out of 10.
0 out of 10.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's pretty much become one of the part of the main cast in terms of voice actors now, and being used for smaller roles and single episode roles.
Wait, Fluttershy had lines in this episode?
I don't think so.
It must have been near the beginning.
Maybe.
Perhaps. Then again,
she might have just been.
Ashley Ball had lines. It must have been not very many lines for Applejack and Rainbow Dash. I don't remember very many.
Yeah, Rainbow Dash definitely had a line.
Well, it's also got Tabitha St. Germain as Rarity as well. It must have been when they were in the castle.
Yeah, talking about how they were going to help the yaks, I guess.
Yeah,
I can't remember. I mean, all of them are also voicing other characters who talked, so maybe they just kind of threw all of the characters in there, even if they didn't have a line.
Except for Tara, she only voiced Twilight, so
that's normal for not. Yeah. That was weird. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, that was weird. My microphone died for a second. Okay.
Something I will say, because this is a complaint that we do sometimes get with Pinky-centric episodes, that Andrea's, it may well be the way that she's directed, not necessarily how she performs, but Pinky can be very over the top and quite shouty sometimes, not necessarily on purpose, not necessarily as a necessarily a problem, but where she gets like very, very excited. And here, while she does still get pretty excited, it is interesting how much more tempered she is in this episode compared with, I don't know, say A Friend Indeed or something similar to that.
Yeah, and a lot of that, a lot of that has to do with, again, going back to the
Maturity.
the thing. Well, no. We're going back to how Pinky and a lot of the other characters kind of fall when they are not the main or like sub focus of an episode, where they're there just as a supporting character. Most of the time, those characters, since they don't have a lot of lines, or other times they fall into their sort of normal status, and Pinky's is usually the comic relief, and so in a lot of episodes where she's not the focus, that usually happens. But when episodes like this where she becomes the focus, we do get to hear that full range of her voice that isn't just that wacky, loud, comedic tone that she has in a lot of episodes.
Distilled Pinky is better than concentrated Pinky.
So how about the humor in the episode? What does everyone think about the episode's humor?
I'd like to say there's not a whole heck of a lot, but then again, there's still a bit here. Like I mentioned before, there was Rutherford's line, quoting Ice Cube here. What's his name? Ice-T? I don't know these rappers' names.
Ice Cube, I see. What are you looking for? I think there was an Ice Cube and an Ice-T. I don't know.
Might have been. It was the one where he was like saying, "Pink pony better check self before wreck self," and it was Ice Cube. I'm sorry. Like I said, I apologize. Mr. Ben doesn't know his rappers, so I don't exactly follow hip hop or anything of that nature. So
yeah, that was a funny line though.
And then Prince Rutherford thinking Pinky's name was Pink Pony Who Lives with Baked Goods. In the midst of running and exclaiming, "Oh my gosh," all the way to the Castle of Friendship, Pinkie Pie knocks over Applejack's bucket of apples, and she pauses her "oh my gosh" just to apologize right before going right back to what she was doing.
Oh god, that picture. Nom.
Yeah, him, Pinky managing to just swallow that cake whole. The Yaks being able to swallow that cake whole as well, just to be on the top of that. Then we mentioned Pinky's just so paper thin story with the allegory between the goat prince named Rutherford and the magical gowns of Bovineville. As if that could be any clearer than glass.
Freaking magical cows.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
I want to see that show.
Funny enough, even though it's not a magical one, and I just realized we have some close to a magical cow, and them's fine hers because the AJX being that as a cow.
Nice.
I think Gummy was some of my favorite parts of like visual humor in the episode. Just seeing all of his reactions or non-reactions to things, and all the different things he did with Pinky throughout the episode was very fun to watch.
Gummy's just like the perfect foil for Pinky. We need to see more of him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Pinky managing to somehow manage to ask all 20 million questions with Gummy on the way to Yakyanistan, or I should say on the way back from Yakyanistan, and then her attempting to play it again on the return journey with everyone else. Rainbow Dash is like, "We're not playing that. just even when she was just her interactions with the rest of the main six, just like word for word, she's even referring to herself as Pink Pony, and then followed up with like, Pinky, we have to help the yaks, and Pinky's like, wait, stop. In conclusion, we have to help the yaks. And then there's like a pause, and like Apple's actually like, just roll with it.
I guess all of Pinky's, this is good, kind of goes back into voice acting too, but all of the times where Pinkie Pie was impersonating the yaks with that really deep voice, that was really well done by Andrea there.
I also like how when they got back to Yakianistan, I mean, not only was Pinky utilizing the same spy outfit that she used like back from season 4, but she even gets to the point to where she starts dramatically climbing the gates of the door to the main area, and Rainbow Dash just gives Twilight a look, and then she flies over the gates and just opens them from the inside.
Yeah,
Gordia called. They have a knot they want you to look at. I'm sorry.
There was a missed opportunity there. In that I think that they should have brought back Fluttershy's secret mission suit for that as well.
I don't think any of them were taking it quite as seriously as Pinkie Pie was, though.
Yeah, even Fluttershy wasn't. Just like, hey, it's a day out.
Let's say we had the Yak Festival naming Yik Slurbert Fest, which naturally involves a lot of stomping, and also is kind of, they're all like, how do you pronounce this thing? After the yak stomping causing an avalanche, Pinky asking if this is all part of the festival, and with Rudder for the response, with Pink Pony asked too many questions. And then just, of course, just Prince Rutherford, in general, is like, and that is how yaks defeat evil and save world. Bang! Pretend that is door. I just slammed it.
I'm half expecting to say, hey cousin, you want to go bowling?
That would have been funny. And then just, I love the little point where it's like right near the beginning, Pinkie Pie was asking for like one of those horn helmets, and Prince Rutherford was like, helmet too big and too heavy for Pink Pony head. And then like right at the very end, he acquiesces to this, and he gives Pinky that horn helmet, and she's like, yeah, this seriously, this is actually very heavy.
yeah. The part with them swaying to the just complete silence on the audio for the episode.
Yeah.
On that, kudos to the sound effect people for having the little rings or whatever on the ears of the yaks actually jingle every single time their head moved in the episode. It was pretty crazy. They put that sound effect in every time their head moved. And you can really hear it in that part there.
That's pretty much all I've got in terms of everything, though.
In terms of the animation and visuals, there's a lot of fun. With the Pinkie Pie episode, there's always a lot of fun faces and things that Pinkie Pie does with her mane and stuff like that in it. I really liked the animation style during Pinkie's goat story that she was telling. Sort of like these childish drawings of goats and magical cows there. They always do something like that whenever Pinkie's telling a story in the show, and it's usually pretty fun to watch. Like the last, like one of the other ones that always comes to my mind first would be in A Friend Indeed, where she has like the felt cutouts when she's talking during the one scene in that episode. Goat Simulator Pony Edition.
My Little Goat Simulator.
And the other animation that I had was we see the return of the Pinkie Spy disguise that we've seen a few times with her before with the goggles. I think the first time we saw it was in the Crystal Empire episode back in season 3, at least the one with the goggles on. She had a skin tight thing during the It's About Time episode in season 2. Those freaking goggles though. Yeah, the part where she's climbing the door there, and after Rainbow Dash opens it, and she says, "Yeah, I'll be just a minute." She kind of drops down and burrows under the snow after them.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the return of the Pinky drill. I loved that.
Oh yeah,
that was that was funny to see again when she just started drilling.
Yeah. Anything else for humor or anything? For the visuals, animation?
Yeah, I've got nothing.
Okay, so we can move on to the score and the backing music for the episode. This one actually kind of surprised me with it. I mean, obviously, going into last week's episode, Royal Problem, just kind of knowing sort of what was happening, I was expecting some really great score from that, and got that. This one, kind of not really sure what you're expecting here, other than maybe some return of themes or musical styles, instrumentation from the previous Yak episode. And we had that, but I really, really liked the Yak themes that were introduced in this episode. They took on a similar instrumentation from the previous one. The previous Yak episode had a lot more it's hard to describe, like a barbarian style, I guess, of music, a lot of heavy percussion and in it, and dulcimer as well, and kind of give it that barbarian feel, especially with the heavy percussion. Here it's a lot more subdued. We get that a few times for it, but the score here is a little bit different since they're not angry or anything in this episode. They're just kind of celebrating their stomp fest that they're doing. So it has this really cool thing where it still keeps the instrumentation, the dulcimer and the percussion from last, but adds some accordion to it, adds some very low mandolin as well in it, and it gives us this really fun score to listen to, and it's packed throughout the entire episode. There's a couple of different melodies that play, a couple different cues that are used for, like, there's like a dancing, kind of like a more dancing one, and there's another one that's used that we'll hear through it, and they're just really fun to listen to. They remind me a lot of, if you've ever seen the Sherlock Holmes, the new Sherlock Holmes movies that were done back in 2000, especially the first one in 2009. Hans Zimmer's score from those movies is really fun. It uses a lot of the dulcimers and percussion and accordion, and it sounds very, very similar to the score that William Anderson used in this episode in terms of its instrumentation, the very kind of bouncy, almost like a folk dance sort of nature to the rhythm of it as well with it. So it has a lot of similarities to the score from those. So if you've seen that movie, or if you haven't, it's a good movie. If you haven't listened to the score for it, it's really some of my favorite Hans Zimmer stuff. It's just really kind of really fun, a fun score to back a lot of the fun scenes in Sherlock Holmes, and it kind of does a similar thing in this episode. So we'll let me load up the score here. We'll start from the beginning of the episode here, where right before the cold open, where Pinkie is talking with Twilight and stuff. When Pinkie talks about sending the letters to the Yaks requesting an invitation, we get a little quick introduction to their style of instrumentation for their score. Oops. Okay, here we go. it's a different melody than what we hear going forward in the episode, but it introduces us to the instrumentation that they'll be using for that. Next track is when Twilight is crowning Pinkie Pie the official friendship ambassador of the Yaks. Picks up with that same motif that we ended on before the opening. Some arpeggios here on clarinet. I really like that cue at the end there. It's kind of like this little wacky fanfare when Pinkie Pie is proclaiming herself the official friendship ambassador of the Yaks. It's very like a wacky kind of thing that fits the situation perfectly there. So the next track is when we actually get to Yakistan. This is a longer one. This is 3 minutes long. This encompasses that entire beginning part of Yakistan there, where she meets up with Prince Rutherford, and he shows her around the different areas, different buildings that they have, and their community there. And we'll hear all of the different motifs that the Yaks get in this episode here in this track, and then they're repeated in subsequent tracks for it. And this whole episode is just packed with this Yak score, and it's really fun to listen to. So I'll try and point out some of the different ones as we go through here. We start out with this little thing as Pinkie Pie's landing, and I believe this first one here is more this slightly more barbarian style one that we heard from their previous appearance. With the really heavy percussion there, and the dulcimer taking the center stage there. Once we're introduced to Prince Rutherford and he starts showing us around, we shift to the other style of score in the episode that features a lot more accordion in the background. And that right there is the kind of the folk dance score that we hear throughout the episode as well. Now this next part here is again that kind of folk dance one, and this is a cue that we'll hear a couple times through the episode. It starts out slow and then starts getting progressively faster as it goes on. It doesn't quite accelerate as much in this instance, but there's another appearance later in the episode where the acceleration is a lot greater for it. This is probably the cue from this episode that reminds me the most of the score from Hans Zimmer's Sherlock Holmes score. A little bit of like very kind of pompous fanfares type score for Pinkie there as she's talking as the ambassador. Now we go back to that slow cue here. Of course, a lot of the tuba in the background as well, backing it up with that very bouncy feel. a little bit of different score there for that part. That part there is a little different because that's actually the scene where they're listening to the music in the music hut. So that's the music that they were listening to on the record there. Excuse me, this is the music hut here. Forgot the music hut was after the sleep hut, not before. So that was the big Yak-Yakistan tour track, which introduces us to all the different cues that we'll hear throughout the episode here. So now the next few tracks are shorter tracks that reprise some of those cues for the different situation. So the first one is the track that's going to be backing the Yak-Yakistan, the stomp time that they're having. And yeah, this is the one. I'll play it again. This is that one that starts slow and accelerates. Accelerates throughout, and this one accelerates a lot quicker here, and then has a little bit of an additional score to the end of it instead of cutting off like it did before. I really like that's probably one of my favorite short individual tracks in the episode there. I just really like that speed up and the tempo through the track, and that final part of it's just a really fun kind of folk dance. So now we get to the part where they are digging through the snow, or attempting to dig through the snow. And keeping with that dulcimer there. And here we go with the same track. A little bit of that mandolin there at the very end there, you can hear it a lot lower than we're normally used to hearing it in the episode. So then we get to the yak sleep hut, one of the different cues here. And that's one of the things that just really surprised me about this episode is just the amount of the score that was in it. I was expecting that kind of this style of score, but these tracks are just, there's so many of them that were all throughout all the Yak's antics that backed him, and they're just really fun to listen to. There's something about this style of music that I personally just find really kind of fun to listen to, and a lot of the ones just kind of almost make you want to get up and dance to it. So now we get the score that's going to be backing the two hungry Yaks talking about how they're hungry. Again, a little bit more sad track here, a little sad tone. Still back to that dulcimer though to keep the same style. So now we get to Pinkie Pie's Goat Story, which has this really fun, really goofy sounding soundtrack to it to fit the goofy story that Pinkie's telling here. Again, keeping the same instrumentation though. I really like how uneven the how uneven the tempo is there, and how it keeps speeding up and slowing down, really helping to match Pinky's sort of in her mind trying to piece together this fake story, and it really matches that sort of her inner workings there as she's trying to think up all these crazy things that relate to what the situation at hand, but without it actually being the situation, the same exact people involved. So next one is Rutherford's story when he's telling his story about him being trapped in ice. A lot more slower version of the themes. Still that same kind of bouncy tuba in the background going on the beat there, but a lot slower as he's telling the story there. A little bit of the spy music that we've heard before in the series as Pinkie Pie tries to sneak back into the Yak Village. And then much like last week, we have another short montage in this episode, which is backed by its own montage track. This one has a similar feel to last week's episode in terms of the instrumentation, the keyboard, the glockenspiel it has, and the strings that it has in it. That instrumentation is very classic kind of Friendship is Magic. Really, you hear it kind of takes you back to some of the classic score and episodes of the show. Last week's montage had the same sort of instrumentation, and this one has it too. It's a little short, but it's fun to listen to. Has a similar key and chord progression of some of those classic Friendship is Magic songs as well. And then it kind of shifts at the end there to a little bit more of the spy type of sneaking kind of score at the end there with the trills on the woodwinds there at the end, being that they are all sneaking around doing this friendship solving thing. So finally we get to the last episode here where Prince Rutherford finding out what Pinkie did and thanking her, etc., leading us to the episode's end. So we'll hear some more again of those Yak themes in here. Starting right again with this bouncy dance. In addition to banjo, Applejack always has like some wood block in her score as her talking at that part of the score. Some more intense score here for who we think is going to be an angry prince. But yeah, he's not angry. A similar sort of chord progression and cue that we've heard before in the series there, but has a little bit of that dulcimer in the background. One more of that backing for Pinkie's Yak impression there. that takes us to the end of the score. And actually, that's something I forgot to mention in the humor section, that little kind of stinger that Pinky has at the end where it irises out on her, and then she's like, has one more thing to say at the end before the episode sort of cuts out. It's not the first time we've seen an episode end that way with Pinky either, so that was a fun kind of funny ending there. I love when they do that with Pinky sort of breaking the fourth wall there. I forget exactly what she said there. Let me see. Why is that not coming up? There we go. Oh yeah, it was the comment about the heavy head where where she says Pink Pony needs no pony's help. Just kidding. Pink Pony got Apple Pony good. Laughs, and then if Iris is out and it comes out, it says no seriously, this is heavy. And the line delivery there was fantastic too. Moving on. What does everyone think about the episode's theme and moral?
Well, so basically, there's a few points here. Sometimes you need help, and it doesn't diminish you to ask for it. Not getting help when you need it can leave you in a worse situation than simply just lose pride. Also, when your friends need help, don't focus on getting their permission to help or changing their minds when they refuse you. Just help them. Also, many cultures have different standards than ours, and something as common and simple as asking others for help in our culture could be taboo in someone else's, and it's important to find a way to respect those differences while still helping others when they need it. It's again also the responsible. I'm sorry. It's also about respecting other people's cultures, even if they seem confusing or counterintuitive to you. So kind of a bit of a three-way prong on that. Also, don't be a dick.
So, favorite parts for the episode? Any not favorite parts?
Just Prince Rutherford in general. Just, Gummy just licking Pinky's face is another favorite part of mine. Just Pinky also being, just front and center, just being just the incredible diplomat as well. Just completely blew my expectations of that.
Yeah, I think Gummy would be definitely one of my favorite parts of it. Just that was great, and I just love the music of the episode too. It really kind of overshadowed a lot of other stuff for me personally. Just I wasn't expecting it to be quite that ample in it and that good. And yeah, I'd also agree with other people. I did enjoy Pinky in the episode as well. I thought she was very well written, and I like episodes where I like this episode where Pinkie Pie is still Pinky, but she sees problem solves. Like Pinky questioning Rutherford's logic and stuff. She's very thoughtful, smart pony, and is shown to be in this episode. So, overall feelings, any final thoughts, conclusions, concluding statements?
No, I think I'm pretty much good on that, so.
Yeah, I think overall it's not a lot of stuff. I'm actually surprised we talked about it as much as we did, but probably because we went on some tangents. It's not something that is really, a lot to discuss in it. It's not like there's a ton of ample story or characterization into it, but I think it was fairly well put together. They treated Pinky really well, wrote Pinky very, very well for it in the episode, and it was at least enjoyable to watch, and had a lot of fun moments in it. And it was fun seeing the Yaks more of the Yaks homeland, Yaks village there, than we had seen in the previous episode. And nothing I'm saying has anything to do with the last the previous episode. I'm not trying to compare it to a royal problem. Every episode is individual and different. But even just on its own, this episode it's a little more simple in terms of story and character development. It's something more along the lines of, like, one that always pops into my mind would be Applejack's Day Off, which was another episode that had a very simple premise, simple story. Wasn't some big groundbreaking episode or anything. That very slice of life, but it's still very enjoyable, I think, to watch, and had a lot of very funny moments in it. And I'd agree with what DM12 there said. I think she did a very good job as the ambassador there. Yeah, in some ways, I guess it would be sort of a flopped version of Party Pooped. So yeah, overall, good episode, I think. So yeah, with that, that'll take us to the end of today's Equine Episode Examination episode. It's a lot of episodes. So we'll be back, of course, next week, next Tuesday, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We will be moving on now to the Equestria Girl special, since MLP is now in its mid-season hiatus, and will probably be in mid-season hiatus until sometime in August, potentially. But at least the next 3 weeks, we do have the 3 Equestria Girl specials that are going to be showing on Discovery Family, so we'll be able to discuss those like normal episodes over the next 3 weeks. So that's very convenient for us here at Triple E, at least. So as you can see below the stream here, we have updated our countdown to the Equestria Girl specials. The one that will be premiering this weekend at the same time as the Pony episodes normally do, 11:30 Eastern Daylight Time, will be the first special, Dance Magic. So we will be discussing that one next week here at Triple E. So I'm definitely looking forward to some more horsewoman talk, because it's been a little bit since we've seen anything from the Equestria Girls, and some of these specials look very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with them now that these are 3 completely separate 22-minute specials, episodes, they're episode length, the same length that My Little Pony episodes would be, versus it having being a 70-minute or so movie like we've gotten with all the previous installments. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of the story and pacing of them, being that they're going to have focus on 3 different stories in a much shorter time frame versus one story in a more feature-length time frame. So I'm interested to see what they do with it. I know I've definitely been interested with this just because it should give us more opportunities to focus on maybe other characters and more situations where in a movie you kind of have to have that laser focus on a character or two, and it's hard to waver against that without the whole movie losing focus. So now that we have 3 separate stories coming, I'm looking forward to see kind of if they're able to focus more on just Twilight and Sunset in the episodes, which pretty much all the previous Equestria Girl stuff had focused on. So we'll be talking about that next week at the same time. It's Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time here on CinemaQuestria. So make sure you join us for that. And after we get through all those specials, we'll resume our Season 4 flashbacks for our discussion with Philly Vanilli. So that's all coming up. So thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Hope you all have a great evening. Bye-bye.
See you, folks.
Later, folks.